The chocolate cake sat untouched as Patricia Wellington, my mother-in-law, slid the manila envelope across the patio table. 5-year-old Tommy was laughing in the bounce house with his cousins, completely unaware that his world was about to shatter. "Sign these, Jean," she whispered, her manicured fingers drumming against the papers. "Or I'll tell everyone whose child he really is." I stared at the divorce papers, my hands trembling. "What are you talking about, Patricia? Tommy is Michael's son. He has his eyes, his." She pulled out a second envelope with a clinical precision that made my stomach drop. The DNA test results bore the letterhead of Gene Tech Laboratory. My name. Tommy's name. And a third name that made the world tilt sideways. Roland McConnell, probability of paternity. 99.97%. "You have 30 minutes to decide," she said, smoothing her pearls, "before I make an announcement that will destroy this family forever." The birthday balloons swayed in the afternoon breeze as 20 guests chatted nearby, completely oblivious to the nuclear bomb Patricia had just detonated at my feet. My mouth went dry as I realized she wasn't bluffing. 6 years earlier I'd been Jean Kemp, a shy bookkeeper who thought she'd won the lottery when Michael Wellington noticed me at that charity gala. The Wellingtons owned half the commercial real estate in Austin, and Patricia made sure everyone knew it. "Michael could have anyone," she'd said the night before our wedding. "Don't forget how lucky you are." I'd swallowed my pride and smiled, desperate to belong somewhere after aging out of foster care at 18. Michael was kind, gentle, everything I'd dreamed of in a husband. When Tommy was born, Patricia's coldness toward me intensified, but I attributed it to typical mother-in-law jealousy. "He doesn't look like Michael," she'd mutter, holding my newborn son at arm's length. "Those dark features. Are you sure about the timing, Jean?" I'd laughed it off, but now her words felt like ice water in my veins. How long had she suspected? How long had she been planning this moment? Michael appeared beside me, his hand warm on my shoulder. "Mom, what are you two discussing so seriously?" "Tommy's asking for his cake." Patricia smiled sweetly. "Just girl talk, darling. Jean was just telling me how grateful she is for everything this family has given her." That night, after the guests had gone home and Tommy was asleep, I stared at the DNA results until the numbers blurred. Roland McConnell. The name hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Roland had been my study partner in community college 6 months before I met Michael. We'd had one night together after finals, both of us stressed and lonely. I'd been certain about my timing, certain Tommy was conceived during my honeymoon with Michael. But looking at my son now, sleeping peacefully in his superhero pajamas, I saw what I'd refused to acknowledge. Roland's high cheekbones, his straight black hair, the slight upturn of his nose. How had I been so blind? Michael knocked softly on Tommy's bedroom door. "You've been quiet all evening. Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, the lies already forming on my tongue. "Just tired. Long day." But as he kissed my forehead, I wondered how long I could keep this secret. Patricia clearly had no intention of letting me forget it. The DNA test was dated 3 months ago. She'd been sitting on this information waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The perfect moment to destroy me. Patricia called the next morning before I'd even finished my coffee. "Meet me at Rosewood Country Club." 1 hour. The dining room was nearly empty. Just a few elderly women playing bridge in the corner. Patricia sat at her usual table by the window, already nursing a mimosa despite it being barely 10 a.m. "I've given this considerable thought," she said without preamble. "Michael cannot know the truth about Tommy. It would devastate him. Patricia, please." "However," she continued, cutting me off, "I cannot allow this deception to continue. You have 2 choices. Sign the divorce papers and leave quietly with a reasonable settlement, or I expose everything and you leave with nothing." She slid a check across the table. $100,000. "This is generous considering the circumstances. Tommy stays here, of course. The Wellington name, the Wellington resources, the Wellington future. Those belong to him regardless of his paternity." My hands shook as I picked up the check. "You want me to abandon my son? I want you to do what's best for him. And for Michael. Sometimes love means making hard choices, Jean." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd heard them before from social workers who'd moved me between foster homes. I drove aimlessly for hours after leaving the country club, finally ending up at Zilker Park where I'd often taken Tommy to feed the ducks. A woman sat on the nearby bench watching her own children play. "Rough day?" she asked gently. I looked up to see Elena Sherman, a family attorney whose office was in the same building where I worked. We'd shared elevators and pleasantries for years. "Something like that," I said, wiping my eyes. I couldn't help but notice Patricia Wellington in the club earlier. She looked particularly predatory today. I stared at her in surprise. "You know Patricia?" Elena's expression darkened. "Unfortunately. She tried to have my brother deported last year when he wouldn't sell her his restaurant at a fraction of its value. The Wellingtons are used to getting what they want by any means necessary." Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. "You don't like them." "I don't like bullies," she said simply. "And Patricia Wellington is one of the worst I've encountered. If she's targeting you, Jean, you need to be very careful." Elena reached into her purse and handed me her card. "Call me if you need help. And whatever she's threatening you with, there might be options you haven't considered." That evening, while Michael was at his golf league, I searched his study for any mention of DNA tests or private investigators. In the locked drawer of his antique desk, I found something that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing payments to a private investigator named Jake Morrison. The payments had started 4 months ago, just after Tommy's 5th birthday party. I remembered Patricia's strange behavior that day, how she'd insisted on taking photos of Tommy with every adult male guest, claiming it was for a family album. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You need to see this. A friend." The email contained audio files labeled with dates from the past 3 months. I clicked the first one with trembling fingers. Patricia's voice filled my earphones crystal clear. "I don't care what it costs, Jake. I need definitive proof that child isn't Michael's. His real father needs to be identified. Ma'am, this kind of investigation could take months. I have time. What I don't have is patience for gold-digging little nobodies who think they can fool my family." The recording continued, revealing Patricia's plan to gather DNA evidence from Tommy's school lunch containers and comparing it to samples from men in my past. She'd been investigating me for months, systematically destroying my life. I found Roland through social media, my heart pounding as I typed his name. He was a pediatric surgeon now, married with 2 daughters who looked exactly like Tommy. When I called, his voice was warm but confused. "Jean? Oh, it's been years. How are you?" "Roland, I need to ask you something and it's going to sound crazy." I explained everything. The DNA test, Patricia's threats, the impossible timing I'd been so sure about. Roland was quiet for a long moment. "Jean, there's something you need to know about that night. You'd been drinking and you mentioned you were on antibiotics for a kidney infection. I tried to tell you that antibiotics can reduce the effectiveness of birth control, but you said you'd handle it." The memory crashed back like a wave. The kidney infection I'd forgotten about, the antibiotics that had made me feel sick during finals week. In my stressed state, I'd never made the connection. "If Tommy is my son," Roland continued carefully, "then he has the right to know. And so does Michael. Patricia Wellington can't blackmail you with the truth, Jean. The truth isn't something to be ashamed of." His words hit me like a revelation. Why was I running from this? Why was I letting Patricia turn my son's paternity into a weapon? Elena Sherman didn't just practice family law. She specialized in cases involving parental rights and custody disputes. Her office was filled with photos of families she'd helped reunite, children she'd protected from abusive situations. "Patricia's made one crucial mistake," Elena said, reviewing the audio recordings. "She's been gathering evidence illegally. Tommy's DNA was obtained without consent, the recordings were made without your knowledge, and she's attempting to extort you. But the truth is still the truth. Tommy isn't Michael's biological son. That doesn't give her the right to manipulate the situation. You have options, Jean. Real ones." Elena pulled out a thick file. "I've been researching the Wellingtons since our conversation at the park. Patricia's done this before. using private information to control family members, threatening exposure to maintain power. Her oldest daughter moved to Seattle to escape her manipulation. She showed me court documents, restraining orders, testimonies from former employees who'd been harassed for minor infractions. Patricia Wellington wasn't just controlling, she was systematically abusive. "We're going to turn the tables," Elena said. "But first we need to talk to the two people who matter most, Michael and Roland." My stomach clenched. "Michael will hate me. Maybe. Or maybe he'll surprise you." I asked Michael to meet me at our favorite coffee shop, the one where he'd proposed 3 years into our marriage. He arrived early, looking concerned and handsome in his navy suit, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. "Michael, I need to tell you something and it's going to hurt." I showed him the DNA results first, watching his face cycle through confusion, shock, and pain. Then I played him the audio recordings of his mother's threats and manipulation. By the end, his hands were shaking. "My mother has known for months," he whispered. "She's been planning to blackmail you?" "I'm so sorry, Michael. I never meant for this to happen. I thought Tommy was yours." "I was certain." He held up his hand, stopping me. "Jim, look at me. Do you think I care about biology when it comes to that little boy? I've been his father for 5 years. I've taught him to ride a bike, read him bedtime stories, bandaged his scraped knees. A DNA test doesn't change any of that." The relief that flooded through me was almost overwhelming. "But your mother." "My mother," he said with deadly calm, "has crossed a line she can never uncross." He stood up, his jaw set in determination. "She wants to play games with our family? Let's see how she likes the rules when we're the ones making them." Patricia had planned another family gathering at the country club, a celebration of her 40th wedding anniversary. She'd invited extended family, business associates, and prominent members of Austin society. She expected me to arrive with signed divorce papers and a broken spirit. Instead, I walked in with Michael on one arm and Elena Sherman on the other. Roland McConnell followed behind us, dignified in his doctor's coat, having flown in from San Francisco that morning. Patricia's face went white when she saw us approach the head table where she held court. "Michael, darling, what's this about?" Michael stood, commanding attention from the 100 guests. "Mother, you've spent months investigating my wife, threatening her and manipulating our family. You've hired private investigators, stolen DNA samples from my son, and recorded private conversations without consent." The room fell silent. Patricia's composure began to crack. "Michael, you don't understand. I understand that you've committed several felonies in your quest to control our lives," Elena said calmly, producing a folder of legal documents. "Harassment, extortion, unlawful surveillance, and theft of biological materials." Roland stepped forward. "Mrs. Wellington, I'm Tommy's biological father. But that little boy has been raised by Michael, loved by Jean, and terrorized by your threats for months. Your investigation ends today." The whispers started rippling through the crowd. Patricia's carefully constructed image began crumbling as Elena read the charges that would be filed, the restraining order that was already in effect, and the custody agreement that gave Michael full parental rights regardless of biology. Patricia's final words were a broken whisper. "I was protecting my family." "No," I said, finding my voice at last. "You were protecting your control. There's a difference." As we walked out, Tommy ran to us from the children's area, completely unaware of the drama. Michael scooped him up, Roland smiled at his son with wonder, and I finally felt free. The truth hadn't destroyed us. Patricia's lies had. And now finally we could build something real on the foundation of honesty she tried so hard to undermine. The birthday party 6 months later was perfect. Tommy blew out his candles surrounded by 2 fathers who loved him, a mother who'd fought for him, and a future built on truth instead of manipulation. Sometimes the best families aren't the ones you're born into, they're the ones you choose to build together.